Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burkhart. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Thank you so much for joining us during our holiday break. Season 1 of Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart has already ended, and during our hiatus, we are replaying some of our most popular interviews with fabulous guests that appeared during the first season of our show. We will be picking up Season 2 beginning February 1st. I hope you'll join us. Until then, enjoy this rebroadcast. Hello, my happy people. I hope you are having a wonderful week already. Today is already Wednesday, December 7th. Oh my gosh, Christmas is getting so close. And I don't know about you, but I am not ready yet. I have still got so much stuff to do before our daughter gets here. I don't remember if I've talked about this or not, but one of my bonus daughters that I got in a package deal with my husband is coming to visit us for Christmas this year. It will be her first time spending Christmas with us. Her twin sister has been here before, and they are not identical. So yes, I know this one has not been here before. And this will be just a wonderful time for us to have family and be able to show her Germany and the Christmas markets here. And it's going to be so much fun. But before she gets here, I have like 2 weeks left to do all the Christmas shopping and the decorating and work on my book and work on my podcast and work on my other book and get so many other things done. I'm not stressing. Are you stressing? I'm not stressing. All right. I am so glad that you joined me here today because I have got another fantastic new author interview. We're going to be talking to a friend of mine, Kira Hagen, who has her first book out. It's called Strangeling, and we're going to get to talk to her about it. It's so fascinating. I love sci-fi. It's my favorite genre, and this book is great. You're going to want to stick around and listen to this. Now, if you checked out my blog on Monday, you know, this week has already been rather manic. We have been having electrical problems in our apartment. We have an old fuse box. It's not like the modern panels that you see in most new homes. This is the old, like, ceramic fuses that you have to screw in that are like the size of a golf ball. And this week, the insulation on the wiring decided to finally give way. And we kept smelling like a dead fish kind of smell in the apartment. And my poor dog was getting the blame because we had been feeding him some fresh salmon this week. And we thought that's what it was. But turns out it was actually the insulation from the wires overheating and deteriorating. So we were actually pretty close to being in danger of an electrical fire. So thank goodness we got an electrician here today. Everything is fixed. Hopefully we will not have any more problems going forward, at least in the foreseeable future while we're here in this apartment. Fingers crossed, people, because we have got so much electrical equipment in here that I use for writing the books and doing the podcast and all of the TikTok videos and things like that. And oh my gosh, we cannot have our electrical system go down. It's a moral imperative in this apartment. But that's enough about just what's going on in our life. Let's get on with our interview. Please welcome to my show, Kira Hagen. One of the things that I always do to start out an interview is I ask people how we know each other. And the point of that is because I want people who are trying to connect with other writers and creatives to know where they can go to meet people like you. So how did you and I connect?
I started taking part in Democrats Abroad meetings, and one of the ladies from the local Democrats Abroad chapter here in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany, said, "Oh, Kira, you're writing stuff?" Which I haven't written since high school, and then during lockdown, I started writing again. And she was like, "I've got a friend in Dusseldorf who writes. You should connect." And then you and I chatted on Facebook a little bit and have been friends since then.
Yeah. So that's one thing I want to try and point out to people. You can meet other creative types just about anywhere, especially indie authors, because we are literally everywhere now in like expat groups and political groups and at the
Hmm.
library or, at work or
Yeah.
college. People just need
Uh,
to actually sit down and start talking to each other and discussing their interests so that they can
mhm.
find that they have these kind of things in common.
Couch surfing, face-to-face couch surfing meetings were a thing that got me through like social life and making connections for quite a few years. Haven't done much of that here in Germany though.
Yeah.
These days, I have been mainly a photographer and digital artist or do photo editing.
That was the other thing that we had connected on too was photography because I had studied photojournalism and we had talked about going out and taking photos together.
Right. I was starting to do some architectural photography for the business group, and then lockdown hit, and it quickly became obvious that all of that was going away,
Yeah.
and it was just taking off. Like I was finally ready to go professional here in Germany, mostly doing events and portraits. I ended up with long COVID, which means it's not coming back until I find something to really deal with that. Ugh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so hard to know what's going on with that. People kind of don't really want to deal with it. My general practitioner doctor has no idea about this, so I've just been trying one recommended herbal kind of thing after another. And, part of this now is just adapting. I can't do the active go out and interact with people stuff that I used to. So I'm doing a lot more photo editing, digital art, and writing. And since the long COVID problem started in March, it was really hard to focus on writing, and I'm starting to get back into that, but it's gotten really hard to focus on one thing at a time and to stick with it. And I'm starting to get back into writing. I'm trying to work on book 2. I'm just starting to sit down and write short scenes from somewhere in the Broken Dawn saga. Book 2 is still like I had this all mapped out, and then the ending of book 1, Strangeling, that's the one that's out now, went places I wasn't really expecting it to, and it worked really well. I thought my TikTok reviewer was like, I was just gasping at every other page of the last, few chapters. So that worked great, but it gave away to a certain degree some plot points that'll be more significant down the line. I have this plotted out more or less like a space opera,
Oh,
and
cool.
it's going to be at least 7 books long. It might be 9. It
So
might be more.
why don't you tell us about book one, which is available right now?
Okay, it is a major genre mashup book. There is a romance, and it kind of follows the enemies to lover trope, but it's called Strangeling, and it is post-apocalyptic science fantasy taking place it starts in 2049. The world has undergone a magic apocalypse resulting from the elves of earthly mythology returning from the stars. So I was reading the Kathmoid Turd, I'm probably mispronouncing that, the Second Battle of Moytura, which is a foundational text of Celtic mythology, and the Eddas of Norse mythology, and a bit of other stuff here and there, but those are the main ones. For the perspective of the Shi and Alfar, which are kind of the elf type characters from Scandinavian and Celtic mythology. I wrote them in a big science fiction context. So there is a science fiction kind of explanation of the whole thing. Get a little bit into all sorts of weird science, mycelial networks, fifth dimensional transit. I'm not even sure how to describe it. Like some of these things work so much better in fiction than speaking about them directly.
Yeah.
You know, I do have explanations for this stuff. A lot of it goes back to the Ice Age. I used the possible impact of a meteor on a glacier in Greenland that happened around 10,000 BC. But in my story, that was a spaceship impacting, not a meteor.
Yeah,
But
I love that idea.
and that's partially because I wanted to talk about why did civilizations start around then, because you get Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, and that shows a major meteor strike hitting Earth in some of the artwork, and was obviously formative to the mythology of whatever people built that. It's, the earliest known human built temple. And human agriculture probably started from sowing grains to make beer, not to make bread.
Yeah.
So I just pulled that in because the Celtic elves, most of them drink too much. And Aisling, who is the female lead and more or less the main character, definitely has a problem with that. But the elves, who are symbiotes of the tree that grows between worlds, are essentially immortal, and they will live until something kills them. I wanted to explore immortals who weren't vampires
Yeah.
in the story because vampires are so boring. I mean, they're dead.
Well, and
And
plus, vampire stories are so prevalent
yes,
throughout, so many genres. And
but like,
it's hard to do things new with them that are not getting into the really absurd.
yeah, yeah. But vampires are almost always about angst and guilt, and most of them are really wealthy too.
Yeah.
So I wanted immortals who were into living, who are like gung ho for life. And if you look at the pre-Christian ideas of heroism,
Mm-hmm.
it is all about being all in on living. Yeah. Not necessarily being the best ethical, moral person by modern cultural standards, but
Dionysus
being
comes to
all
mind.
in on living really fully. And so, like, I really thought, especially Aisling Dusty, she's the main character, she's drinking moonshine that raccoons make and driving this stupid pickup and smuggling kids who are undergoing this magical transformation. And then she plays bass for the lumber punks on the weekends. She is living.
Yeah.
And she's pretty typical of young she, or half she in her case. So I'm having fun with that. I'm not sure how clearly I'm getting all my ideas across. It would have been nice to have like one proper editor
Yeah.
instead of like a bunch of beta readers. And I did go through a lot of beta readers, and I rewrote the book 7 times before I was happy with it. When you're self-publishing, and I didn't even try and go for regular traditional publishing.
Yeah. Me neither.
Writing Strangeling was a mental health thing for me. And I looked at my pandemic depression levels and the traditional rejection road of
Mm-hmm.
traditional publishing, and just went, I don't think I can handle this. So I heavily self-edited. I got a pro writing aid and went through the entire book with that, and then had 3 or 4 friends who had done copy editing look over it. And then, of course, I still found like 6 errors after it went to live on Amazon.
Doesn't that
But
drive you
that's the great
crazy? It
thing,
always
when you're
happens.
self-publishing, you just go and correct them.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a big deal. Like, probably the first 3 people who bought a physical copy of the book, one sentence was missing the first word of the sentence. Um, and there was a couple capitalization errors, but that's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And I did my own cover artwork, and
I was going to ask you about that because I love your cover, but I've seen all of the digital art that you've been doing lately, and it's fantastic. I mean, you could probably make a whole career out of just creating covers for people.
I have made a few covers for other people. I'm on this like indie cover design project on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
which really helped me polish my design. I went through so many different options and phases and redrawing that thing. And my cover art is actually based on a bunch of 3D models and then painted over. But the deer I had to do from scratch, and that's the centerpiece.
Mm-hmm.
It's a megaloceros. It's an extinct ice age deer, and nobody illustrates them in white to be like the fairy deer, even when they are illustrated. So I found a few pictures of white deer that are modern relatives of megaloceros, though much
Mm-hmm.
smaller, and use distort functions to more or less push the outline into shape for a megaloceros, and but kind of keep the shadows. And then I did an outline sketch and then hand drew it, and then I had to make the rest of the cover look hand drawn as well.
It looks
It was a lot
amazing.
of
I
work.
love your cover.
Right now, I'm doing a lot with this AI or artificial intelligence imagery,
Yeah, I know. I've been checking
and
that
then
out.
putting photos with it. It's great for making backgrounds for fantasy photos.
I saw
I've
the
got a bunch.
series that you did with your own pictures. Those were so cool.
I'm working on one right now. A friend, she did mermaid poses, but she was just in a dress.
Yeah.
So I've used the AI image creation to create this fantastical mermaid cave based on pre-Raphaelite art and a bunch of fish to swim around and a mermaid tail for her. And
Oh, nice.
it has been a lot of compositing, and I don't have the like color grade quite right. Color grade is like a filter that sort of unites all the colors into one coherent color scheme,
Hmm.
and you put it on as the last step, and I'm not happy with it yet, but it's close. It's like 95% done, but that last 5% has to be right.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way with writing. Image editing or art, the first 10%, which is where you get your composition laid down, and the last 10%, which is where you bring in the wow factor, your subtle lighting that makes the whole thing sparkle. Those are the most important, but you need the entire middle too. Part of why I did so many revisions on Strangeling is that it has to carry this space opera story that is 13,000 years in the making in terms of the origins of it, and starts out in rural Minnesota in this story and will stay there for a little while because the main characters start out small. They don't know what's going on. Nobody's really connected in yet. But it's got to carry this big story. I have to get a good foundation and all these different plots and subplots and intrigues set up. And the first book is a little confusing because of that. And I know it. That's where I would have really appreciated having a professional editor to say, you've repeated this here, or
Yeah.
tone down this hint, or repeat this a second place to be sure people get it, or that kind of thing. I sent mine to just for final copy editing. I would have liked a more intense editor. She was good. She caught some cultural things that I've been over here in Europe since 2005 mostly,
Hmm.
and there are nuances to American culture and what is acceptable and what isn't that I have missed.
Hmm.
And she caught me on a number of things for that. But I think she found like 6 major errors in the entire manuscript. She said it was the cleanest manuscript she'd ever seen.
Oh, wow.
um,
That's nice.
I used to do copy editing for a makeup company in Moscow. Somebody would translate from Russian into English, and then I would correct the English. But
Yeah.
it's not just correcting the English; it's making it sound like the black magic cosmetics need to be responsible for to
Yeah.
make you 20 years younger and slimmer. Uh,
Yeah.
um, so I have the copy editing background myself, and there was a natural disaster in my editor's hometown. A tornado hit,
Oh,
while she was
yeah.
editing my book, so I think she
Oh,
was a little
wow.
yeah.
That could be distracting.
Like they didn't have power for a while.
Yeah. I'm from Kansas. I understand.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was going to tell you, I want to thank you on behalf of everybody who picks up your book for having the aliases and pronunciation pages. Thank you.
Um, yeah, I needed to have that because a lot of the names are in Irish or Gaulish Celtic,
Hmm.
and I do not expect people to know how to pronounce those. I did a student work abroad in Ireland for 8 months in 98, 99. And I was like, I swear they designed their language the way they laid out their street maps purely to confuse invaders.
Well,
Um,
I can tell you, I know how to pronounce some things because I was always a big fan of mythology and used to read a lot of like Celtic myths. So I learned how to say a lot of those names, but I realized I have been saying she wrong for probably a decade.
I actually thought about using an older pronunciation for it, which would be seethe instead
Hmm.
of she, but it was a little too regional, and people who read urban fantasy and folklore and mythology mostly know she
Hmm.
um, as the written form. They might not be pronouncing it correctly. And I kind of thought maybe I should do something different with this just to clarify a little bit. The first version of the story was very much based on a couple role-playing games, Changeling the Dreaming and Shadowrun.
Mm-hmm.
And there are definite remnants of gaming systems I used to play or read novels set in. The book has more in common with Shadowrun than Changeling because Shadowrun is a mixture of like Tolkien fantasy and
I can hear
cyberpunk.
your birds
Yeah,
really loud.
I'm sorry. I'm 2 rooms away from them, but they are all fighting. I'm just going to go turn off the lights on them because they can't tell it's not nighttime. There are 7 of them.
Oh,
I
wow. You still have that many?
Yes,
I thought you had
I'm
gotten rid of most of them, but the breeding pair or something.
the breeding pair is gone. So to explain to your audience, I had 2 birds for a couple of years and they appeared to be infertile. That was not accurate. They produced 19 babies last winter.
Oh my God.
I
Wow.
had, yeah, and I had COVID twice and, recovery periods from each of them.
I had
And
no idea they had that many. I thought you had like 8.
per batch.
Wow.
Yeah, it was 5 or 6 each batch. And man. And the mom laid a ton of infertile eggs too. Whenever I separated her and the dad, she'd just sit and lay eggs like a little blue chicken. And
Wow.
and so I got them to a proper breeder in the spring, and I've just been trying to get homes for the kids since then. I want to keep 2 or 3 of them, but there's a lot of birds here.
So we have the first book out, The Strangeling.
Yeah. Oh, and the miniature dragons in Strangeling are based off these birds. The the little
That's
test
great.
dragons that get into everything and eat windshield wipers. They are based off my parrot.
That's hilarious. I was just reading that where they're leaving the guy with the truck so that it won't eat the tires and the windshield wipers and all that. I love that. That is such a cute point in the story. It's one of those things that's not necessary so much to the
But it's
whole
good.
big picture, but it gives it color and it makes it interesting and makes it fun.
Yeah. And a lot of what I've done with this, like I grew up in expat circles. I'm from northern Minnesota, and the main town I grew up in was 5,000 people in a farming community. But my dad works in tropical agroforestry around Africa.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I grew up going back and forth between Africa and rural northern Minnesota.
Cool.
And then after college, a friend from the American School of Antananarivo, who's a Russian girl, invited me to come to Moscow. And I was already planning on traveling and teaching English. And she said, "Don't go to Taiwan, come to Moscow. You can stay on my couch for a month."
Nice.
I ended up there for about 9 years. So a lot of what I wrote is, or how I wrote more, is based on the expat experience. I have really specifically written the Elscomer she as expats.
Now, I was checking out your
And
author page on Amazon. You have a great standing. You only have 16 reviews on there, but you have 90% of those as 5 stars. You're actually sitting at a 4.9 out of 5 in your review ratings. I mean, that's
yeah,
fantastic.
I've been really happy and surprised by that. Because I mean, for a first novel
Yeah.
and one that is complicated. And I put it into Kindle Unlimited to try and get more reviews.
Well, I'm glad you put it in Kindle. This is the kind of book that I would take with me on vacation, that I just want to chill and have fun and enjoy myself, not
Mhm.
something that I'm going to have to think, is this socially relevant? You know, how is this going to change the world? I want to just have fun, and this book is fun.
Good. It also has some like biting social commentary here and there. And I did try and acknowledge Minnesota's race issues, which
Hmm.
are not minor, especially since I was writing this while the Derek Chauvin trial was going on. And I did get some reviews that some of the race issues were a little weird, which I knew they were a little awkward.
Hmm.
And I asked 3 or 4 different people if they could sensitivity read it for me and offer some feedback. I thought it was better to acknowledge something and maybe get it wrong than to make people invisible again.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because unfortunately, there are so many sections of society that have been invisible, especially in
Mm-hmm.
literature, television, all of the creative arts, it has been very bland. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
And it needs more color, more creativity, more inclusion. We need to see people. I mean, this is one of the things that I was talking about with Snolly Dave in the last interview was that we need more
Mm-hmm.
inclusion. We need art to represent life.
Yeah.
As you look out, you do not see everything the same color, the same race, the same gender, the same abilities.
Mm-hmm.
We need to see the diversity that exists. It all needs to be represented. And people may not like that. They might not like that these things are in the world, but they are. And
Mm-hmm.
they deserve to have the same representation as everything else that's in the world.
And there's all these opportunities for storytelling that people are missing because they're retelling the same, usually, hetero white love story. And my three main characters are basically white, so I will admit that. Arthur has some mixed heritage, but it's still European. It's just from before Europeans were white, which I kind of wanted to point out, like, because it goes into this Ice Age stuff. And the genetics that made people white didn't come around until like 8,000 years ago.
Hmm.
With these very old she characters, he's, I think, five generations removed from these pre-white Ice Age people. So he's a little bit mixed heritage. And Connor's one of the Elfscomer she, and Ashling is half Elfscomer and half Swedish American, and mostly culturally the latter. I'm trying to make it complicated because there is a lot of complication.
Yeah.
Because it's about people. I mean, the story is about people who have survived a disaster and are getting on with their lives and trying to do their best. So a lot of that is about friendship and family and sticking together through hardship, but also snarking at everything, because when people are in disasters, they have the worst sense of humor, like terrible. They will call each other all kinds of weird names. And yeah.
Usually whenever there's something horrible going on, that's when my dark sense of humor comes out.
Yes. Yes.
That's my
That,
coping mechanism, say making really bad jokes in bad situations.
yeah, so a lot of the story is also about coping mechanisms. Like Ashling can hardly open her mouth without making a reference to some geek movie. She put everything in context of Star Wars or superhero movies or Star Trek or something comparable.
Oh, you wrote about me in your book? Thank you. Oh my God, I do that all the time. My husband and I will go somewhere. I'm like, look, like see something. It's like, there is no try or something. It's like, look, and we'll have to go take a
Yeah,
picture by that. Or everywhere we go, we find Yoda somewhere. It's amazing.
I
We have
know. And
so
then
many
I'm like
pictures with Yoda.
reading through, in my editing process and going, is this fair use? Is this fair use? Is this fair? Disney, please don't sue me.
So now what do you hope to do next?
Well, I'm working on book two. I've gone through like five outlines for it, and I have scenes here and there written out. And it's just like where to start the damn thing.
Yeah.
Because it should take place about a month after book one. I have a bunch of things that should happen and things I need to set up, because I've written around 500,000 words of rough drafts for stuff going on after book one. But the ending of book one messed up my timeline of what should happen where.
Yeah. I
And
did that in one of my books.
yeah. And
That's a
so
real
trying to figure
pain.
out how to bridge where I left book one with where I need to be by the end of book two.
Yeah.
It's turning problematic. And I've had this like brain fog, or as I said, and it's getting better. I am starting to write again. But when I was writing book one, I would go back and forth between teaching myself digital painting and writing. And I made like about 90 some digital paintings based on photos I'd done.
Hmm.
Um, Around the same time, I was writing Strangeling. And COVID does brain damage. And I definitely felt that. And I'm trying to get over that. And it was easier for me to do art for the last few months. So I've been doing more art and less writing.
Oh, yeah,
But
I understand that.
but I will get back to it.
Now, would you be interested in reading a little bit of your first book?
I kind of think the little bit with the dragons might be fun. The
Yeah,
Dracula.
that would be good.
Okay, so I'm Kira Hagen. I wrote Strangeling, Children of the Broken Dawn, Book One. This is starting on about 3 pages into the book, and Arthur, who's one of the main characters, is a captain in this prison labor unit of people who've changed into folkloric creatures, and they're on patrol and along the border of the Elsecomers no-go zone around Minneapolis. We turned a corner onto an even worse road. A flock of brightly colored draclets burst out of a tall cottonwood in a rainbow of brilliant colors, squawking like parrots. We watched the little cryptids wheel and fly out over the river for a minute. What are those? Hassan asked, fascinated. Pocket dragons, draclets. They're an invasive exotic out of the stolen cities. Annoying, but mostly harmless. They act like escaped pets. Cool. Do they breathe fire? Nah, their saliva is corrosive though, and they like chewing on rubber and plastic, sometimes metal, Jones said. Gotta keep them off the cars. Little effers eat windshield wipers like licorice sticks. You'll probably stay with the gear when we go hunting off-road to keep them off the vehicles, I said, and his eyes widened. No, not alone. We do everything with at least a partner. But they'll go after the tires, window lining, wipers, and radio antennas. Speaking of radios, Jones said, glancing at me, the Green Ladies team has a guy with power over technology, I sighed, tapping on the fingers of the Jeep store. The military wants him bad. He's blocked our radios, stolen our patrol schedules, and broken the code Lieutenant Birch came up with for covert communication. And whatever they're smuggling through the Edgelands, we have to assume they hear every word we say on the radio. So keep that in mind if you need to use your walkie when they're around. Birch's code was the Klingon language, Captain, Jones groaned. He shouldn't have been at all surprised to have another obvious geek figure that out, or tell him he had a flat forehead and his father smelled of elderberries. Is that good?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That cracks me up every time I read that bit.
And that should give you a good idea of the mood of the books and the kind of references and snark. But the stakes are high. The bad guys would like to change the climate of Earth to the point where humans wouldn't be able to survive it anymore. And some of it will get political because, I look at modern politics and it makes so much more sense if there's aliens who want to change the climate of Earth to something that humans can't survive than just that our politicians and our will to change things is so pathetic that we might make the Earth uninhabitable all on our own just out of laziness and greed.
Yeah.
Part of the underlying story there, and I tie it into mythology, Celtic and Norse mostly, and have a number of major and minor figures from both Celtic and Norse mythology popping in every now and then.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today. This has been such a delight talking to you and hearing about your book. So why don't you give us the title one more time and tell people where they can find it?
Strangeling, like strange and then ling. Children of the Broken Dawn, Book One by Kira Hagen. It's on Amazon.
And I hope that whenever you get around to getting book 2 out, you'll come back and read some of that for our listeners.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you so much. You have a good afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
So there you have it, happy people. Kira Hagen and her book, Strangeling. Go to Amazon.com right now and check it out. You will not be sorry. And be sure, if you read the book, to leave a review. You have no idea how much leaving a review helps indie authors like Kira and me and my other friends. We live and die on Amazon by the number of reviews we get. You don't have to put much. Hit some stars, put a line on there. It's like, I liked it. I would read it again. I would buy it for a friend. Just one line. You don't need to write a dissertation on this. Just one quick line. It was good. It's worth buying. If we can get just 20 to 25 reviews on a single book, it puts us in a whole other level where we actually get put in searches on Amazon. If you search for like Strangeling, it will pull you up and you might also like this book. It helps us so much to get seen and noticed by the number of reviews we have. Whether or not they're good or bad doesn't really matter. It's the number of reviews that we have. Now, of course, we would much prefer getting 5-star reviews. I'm not going to lie. But it's the number that matters. It's showing that it's being bought, it's being noticed, people are reading it, and that's what really counts for the Amazon algorithm. So please, I don't care if it's my book or Kira's book or anybody's book on Amazon, leave a review if you read it, because it will help us so much. And you have no idea how grateful indie authors are for each and every review we get. They are like gold to us. You want to do a favor, you want to do some charity work for someone for a Christmas gift, go through every indie book that you have ever bought off of Amazon and leave a review. Seriously, that is like the best gift that you can give any indie author anywhere. I am not even kidding. Unless you want to buy like 10 of their books and give them away to everybody you know for Christmas, which is also a good thing. But the reviews mean a lot. So take a little bit of time and leave a review for someone this year. Make it a Christmas gift, It's your charity work for the holiday. So now, it is that time again, my happy people. It is time for you to go forth. Leave a review on Amazon and be really happy about it because all of us indie authors will be. Have a great Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in for our rebroadcast. Don't forget, our second season will be beginning Wednesday, February 1st. I hope you'll join us. Until then, go forth and be happy.